Welcome to the very first episode of the Mind and Body podcast. I'm John Beasley, and I am joined with my co-host, the amazing Amber Boyer.
Hi, guys. I am unbelievably excited to be with you guys today and to start this with John.
Yeah, I'm super excited about this. Just for those who are listening, Amber is a NASM certified personal trainer who works with clients every single day. And I was so excited she said yes for helping with this podcast. She definitely loves people and is passionate about the subjects of mental health and physical health. So it was just so excited that she said yes, which is a great segue into why we wanted to start this podcast together. Now, the purpose of Mind and Body is to basically give you the most updated information on how to optimize your mental and physical health and performance. The way I look at it is gaining mental and physical health is like getting up to that baseline of functioning, whereas mental and performance, physical performance is more of trying to optimize yourself as a human being, trying to reach your full capacity. And I'm excited to share my journey. I know you're going to love hearing Amber's journey as well. But also, we're going to try to bring on so many people who are experts in their field, professionals,
So many
athletes that have taken this journey as well. And what I love about having people on and talking about these different things is I'm always a learner. And that's the way I'm looking at this. Yes, I want to share what I've learned, but I am so obsessed with learning. And I'm looking forward to what I'll learn from these guests, from Amber, the great Amber. And I'm just really thrilled about this journey. So what I want to do is I want to actually talk a little bit about our personal stories. So what's cool, when I was talking to Amber prior to the show, I thought it was really interesting when it comes to the subject of mental and physical health. Our stories were kind of opposite in how we kind of got into it. So Amber, I would love for you to share your story. Like why do you do what you do? Why are you passionate about helping people with their mental and physical health? I mean, you do this just about every day.
every day.
How did you get here? Tell us your story.
Okay. So I'm going to try to keep this a reasonable length because my story started years ago. And thank you again for asking me to do this with you. Like, I had been playing around for a couple of years with starting a podcast, and I love learning. I love teaching people. I love taking so much information and condensing it down and giving people like the basic facts. And I was like, podcasting is like a great way to do that. But I never just like bit the bullet and did it. And when you asked me a couple of months ago if we could toy around with this idea, I was like, this is
when I saw
meant to be.
Right. Well, when I saw you doing reels and just with Instagram, wherever, I was just like,
Yeah.
this is great stuff. And you were hitting on things dealing with mentality, but also like, hey, here's what I'm doing in my workouts. You were motivating, you're engaging. And I was like, maybe she would come on. So the honor is mine, but I'm thankful that you're excited to be a part too.
Yeah, no, this is going to be really great. I'm excited. So yeah, my journey started technically like 6 years ago. For those who don't know me, which is a majority of the people listening to this, when I was 21, I was like recently married. And I was going through a lot of life changes. Not only was I married, but I moved. I started a new job that I was driving almost an hour for every day. And just to say the least, my physical side of like health tanked, and my mental health tanked. And I grew up in a community that mental health wasn't really talked about. Depression and anxiety weren't really a thing, and if they were, you could pray it away. And there's a whole side to that we can get into another time. But yeah. And I didn't even know, I was 21 years old and I didn't even know what anxiety was. But after a week of what I later discovered were panic attacks, I literally have a panic attack. every single day for 7 days in a row. I was just sitting on the floor and I was crying, and I had no idea why. No clue. And I was like, what in the world is going on? Like, my new husband was like, are you okay? Like, what's wrong? And I said, I don't know. So I sought some mentorship in my pastor's wife at that time. And she's like, hey, like, how's your activity levels been? You've been under a lot of stress. How's your nutrition been? And I'm like, crap and crap, like horrible. And I was like a high school athlete. I played volleyball for 5 years, and I played on like some soccer leagues and stuff just here and there, for fun. But after I became a young adult and got into the workforce, all that went away. So like physical activity, getting out of bed, going to work, that was my physical
That
activity.
was the workout.
That was the workout. Exactly. And my food, my nutrition, I worked at a restaurant for 3 years. So I was eating restaurant food for a majority of it. And then when I got married, I was working a busy design job. And so I made quick and easy stuff, packaged foods, boxed stuff, frozen pizzas. That was a majority of what we ate. Because I didn't really know how to cook, and I wasn't cooking a lot. So that's what I was grabbing for. So she kind of just gave me some mentorship, and I started getting into exercising. I joined a gym and I worked out at home. And I wasn't really seeing results physically, like I wasn't losing weight. But mentally, things were starting to even out a little bit. I was like, cool. Then, I'm not really sure what prompted it. I started reading in on nutrition because I love science. I always loved science, biology, anatomy. Those were all the classes I aced in high school. And I started reading in on nutrition, and I was like, okay, I should probably clean up my diet a little bit. So I started cleaning up our diet. I say our because I made my husband do it at the same time.
Nice.
And he wasn't as big of a fan, but more vegetables, more fruit, more lean proteins. And I started to see a shift in what I had then discovered. I had anxiety, some extreme amounts. And I started to see that kind of wane. My panic attacks, like I only had them like once a month instead of like multiple times a week. And I was like, okay, this is cool. So fast forward, I kind of just did that for a couple of years. The pandemic came around, the world shut down, all the crazy kind of happened, and I was stuck in my house for 2 months with no job or anything. And that's when the floodgates opened, and I was like, I have all this time.
It's amazing
What
to
am I
me
going to do
how
with this?
the pandemic was for a lot of people a moment of like, I need to reorganize things in my life.
Yeah.
So I didn't actually realize that was the point. And you already had some journey there, right?
Yeah.
But that was a point where you started to really turn the other direction. Really interesting.
Really, because I had all the extra time, and I know that like the pandemic was really hard on so many people. I know it was really hard on your family,
Yeah.
and for me, I know that I definitely had the more positive end of things. That I had that time that I just hunkered down and decided to exercise a lot and read a lot, and that's when I really got into the health and fitness industry. I decided to pursue becoming a personal trainer. I really got into reading about nutrition, and I actually decided like, okay, I think I want to take my life away from the design industry, and I want to help people in this health and fitness industry, especially as I was also surrounded by this all this information happening with the pandemic. And obviously everybody's health and well-being was on the forefront of every newsstand, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, what can I do to like be an impact in this? And so that's where it started. That's when I actually started getting my healthiest. I dropped in that kind of time era, I dropped like 30 pounds, and just did so much research into it. Found some of the best. I'm in the best mental health now than I've been ever. More self-aware than ever. And I'm just so thankful like, yeah, this journey started so many years ago, but I'm so thankful for the path that it took me on. And it did not start in a great place. Like, I was your average young female with some really bad issues and not a lot of support. And I dug my way out of it and
Mm,
discovered like the correlation between what you eat and your mental
mm,
health and your hormones
mm.
and exercise and your mental health and your hormones. Like,
Yeah.
it's crazy. People don't understand how interconnected everything is. And that's exactly what I want to bring to people, is sharing my own journey, sharing everything that I've researched and discovered, and helping people navigate that,
Mm.
because so many Americans, it's over 40% of Americans now are either overweight or obese. More than that, percentage wise, struggle with some sort of mental health issue.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, I think medications have their place. Absolutely. But I think that there's so many other ways we can be supporting ourselves that our mental health really can be significantly better. And that's exactly what I want to bring to this podcast. That's what I want to help women with, help men, like everybody. So that's me in a nutshell.
Yeah. That's what you're
So
really
I,
doing. You're like, man, Jon really needs some help. I'm just going to jump on
yeah,
his podcast, help him get his life straight. He's falling
I'm gonna help you
apart.
get your life back together.
Yeah,
I'm just
right.
kidding.
It's just
I'm just
falling to
kidding.
pieces. I'm falling to pieces. So I
No,
thought, what should you do when your life's falling apart? Start a podcast. That's what you do. No, I'm just kidding.
it's
But
so reasonable. Oh,
it's
so you said you said that you came from like the opposite end of things on this. So I'm really curious. I'm not gonna lie, I actually don't know your whole story. So I want to hear, like, what was your journey? Like, what got you into
so
all of this?
mine doesn't start as drastic. You were like this girl that was struggling with
Yeah.
anxiety attacks and all that kind of stuff. And it's really interesting that the mental side of things kind of pulled you in. And of course, I think you became aware of, here's where I'm struggling. Oh, look, I probably could, manage my weight and health better than I'm doing right now. And then when you start pursuing that, you saw the change that it took place in your mind even further, and also your physical fitness and health. So when I started out, I was the typical, teenage guy that's just like, I want to get big and I want to get strong. That was it. It didn't go much further than that. There was no like anything more noble or thought through. It's just like, I think I went into like well, you go to stores or go into a GNC. Back then, when I was a teenager, GNCs had all the bodybuilder pictures. You know what I
Oh
mean? And
yeah.
now, if you go
Yeah.
into a GNC now, it's all like these just really healthy people. Like they may be in good shape, but they're not necessarily like jacked. And
Right.
I saw this huge muscled out dude on a protein container. I'm thinking, if I take that protein, I'm gonna look like this dude in like 3 months. Okay, I wasn't that naive, but I really did think like, if I take this, and what's
That's a fair
interesting,
assumption.
yeah, but what's interesting is that though fitness and health can be a bridge to mental health, it can aid in that. It also can lead to a lot of like body dysmorphia.
Yeah.
And I know we're going to talk about that
Oh,
in the
that's a good
future.
one.
And it could lead to unreal expectations. Like if you're just a person trying to get in really good shape. And so if any guys are listening to this, you can get jacked and in shape without performance enhancement drugs. But a lot of those guys that were
Yeah.
on those protein things, they were doing more than that protein. But I didn't know that at the time. But
Right.
that's how I got started. Just wanted to get as strong, as big as I could possible. Then and so I started seeing, though, me being consistent in this, not only my own self image improving, but just the way I felt it was improving, but my cognitive abilities were improving
Uh,
as well. And I was always active. I was an athlete. Um, Ever since I was a little kid, I was always running around playing sports, all that kind of stuff. I played some football, so I enjoyed
I
stuff like
could
that.
see.
But getting into consistent weightlifting, which was kind of more of that bodybuilding type style at the beginning,
Mhm.
um, was great for me. But really, what what really began to help me even further was like I just started to like lift heavy, and I thought like if you lift big, you're going to get big. And I would take protein, but I really did not have nutrition dialed in at all. Like it was
Yeah.
just like eat lots of protein, work out really hard. But I would also be like, ooh, cake and ooh, whatever. I was just
I
eating
do
everything.
that too. Ooh,
Well, the
cake.
thing is when you're younger too, your metabolism is faster, your metabolic rate, all
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. It's going fast. So I was able to handle it and still stay, fairly lean. It didn't affect me, but it does have a cumulative effect. A lot of reasons why people all of a sudden sense this change in their, 30s or late 20s, 30s, whatever.
Yeah.
It's not because they had a piece of cake. It's more the accumulative effect of eating that way for years and years and years and years, and
Right.
it can take a toll on you. And even if you're this person that stays skinny forever, like they never gain weight, those people that you kind of hate, they're like,
Yeah.
they eat whatever, never gain weight. They still can get pretty significantly unhealthy if they don't have the appropriate nutrition. So they're skinny, but
Yeah.
really out of shape and can be very unhealthy. But I remember dialing my training in and then dialing my nutrition in. And it just took not only like kind of physique goals to the next level, but it took my, like my mentality, my mental health was improving. So I was starting to see the correlation between a healthy body and a healthy mind.
Ooh, that's good.
Then I went through, and this was just about 6 years ago, a little over 6 years ago. Um, Bethany and I, my wife and I, found out that we were going to have a child that was born with some medical complexities.
Yeah.
And it was really the hardest time of our lives. Like it was just so hard. Just a
Yeah.
dark, dark night of the soul, really difficult. And there's other things that were hard that I can maybe talk about in another podcast, but without making this too long. I was just really discouraged. And if you know me, I am the epitome of an optimist. I'm a
Yeah.
solution oriented person. You put a problem in front of me, I'm like, let's not complain about it. Let's find the solution. But in this case, I was
Mm,
like, there really isn't a solution. And
yeah.
I don't see a way out of this.
Gosh.
And so I just hit a low that I've never experienced before. It was just really, really dark.
Yeah.
We should have a dark episode where I disclose.
We
No,
should.
oh, Amber was like, I don't know. I don't know if I want to get into that. But
No, I
yeah,
think that would be something we should definitely touch on in the future. So
well, I do
people,
think as we touch more on just mental toughness, because
yeah.
I think that's one of the things that I've learned over the last 6 or 7 years is that mental toughness. I always focused on more of a
Yeah.
physical toughness, but then the last, again, 7 years or so, I've been
You haven't
focusing
had a
on
choice.
mental. Yeah. And so what happened was with that, what I saw was some days the only thing I felt like I could do was like drag myself into the gym and just
Mm,
smash out my emotions by like just putting myself under heavy weights.
yeah.
And I thought, hey, I'm feeling psychologically better just because I accomplished something. Like, hey, I can't fix this problem, but I can move some weight. I can work out really
Yeah.
hard. And that's what I did. I would go in and smash the weights. But then I started doing some more reading because I started to see the correlation. And I realized that actually when you do work out, when you do contract the muscles hard, it does secrete hormones that play into changing actually your perspective. Like it actually does
Yeah.
something to your mind. It's not just like, hey, I feel better. I can check something off the list. There's a correlation between the hard work that you put your body under that stress and it actually like relieving you of stress as well and on a psychological level. But and we might
Mm,
get into, I'm not an expert in this field, but get into the neuroscience and actually how this plays out like in a future episode. But I
yeah,
think
for
when
sure.
I started to see like, oh, these two aren't just important things that are, you know, isolated from each other. They're correlated. And if I improve the one, it will improve the other. But you know how you become aware of something and so now you're more intentional about it. It's kind of like, hey, now
Yes.
I'm training for the purpose of actually improving my mindset. And when I'm training, I'm also saying, how can I become more tough? And you know how it is when you hit the grind and you're tempted at sometimes in a mesocycle, you're tempted like, okay, that was hard. I think I should go home. You're like, nope, I'm not going to be that person. I'm not going to quit. I'm going to put in the work. And the reciprocal nature of how your mindset affects your body, and your body training affects your mindset. And if you can be intentional about both, you can go really far in life. And then the last thing I found
Yeah.
out was like, whatever you want to do in life, whatever it is, you're not going to get very far if you don't have mental and physical health. Like
Facts.
whatever it is, if you don't have
Whatever it
mental and
is.
physical health, your longevity is threatened. And so, for any person, no matter what their goal is, they need to have as a core pillar of their life, I want to be strengthening my mind and I want to be strengthening my body. And so that's
Yeah.
why I've been compelled to do this. And you gave a little bit of your story as it relates to like kind of your faith journey as well. But
Yeah.
as I was a pastor for some time, and I was helping people like with their um, maybe with their own spiritual journey. But I was thinking
Hmm.
too about like how many people, even like in the Christian circles, like where they may struggle with their own mental toughness,
Yeah.
or sometimes they have maybe some wrong convictions that like actually cause them not to develop that type of mental toughness, or like maybe
Yeah.
even having like a self-esteem or a strong identity is something that would be foreign to what they should have, which is not the case. But helping them with
Hmm.
that, as well as um, thinking about how their body correlates with their whole person, you know and
Yeah.
that's another thing that just kind of moved me more this direction to be doing this. So that's kind of the short. There's more
I
that I
love
could
that.
tell. But yeah, I was thinking about my physical journey though. I tried everything under the sun when it comes to like different training modalities
Hmm.
too. And I'm looking
Yeah.
forward to getting more into details about that. That'll be fun, but that could be for another day. But yeah, that's my story. That's
I
it.
love that. I love that. Thank you for sharing that. I think it fascinates me so much to know like what life circumstances like brings you along your journey of this next level of self-awareness and mental toughness, or the people who choose to not be that way. It's so fascinating to me. So I'm really excited to continue to dive into this with you.
Yes.
Um,
You
oh
know,
yeah.
so we've been on a journey, and what we're trying to do is for those that are listening, we want to invite you on a journey of mental health and fitness, physical fitness, and
Yep.
also moving past not just getting up to functioning well, but getting past to where, like, hey, I'm actually performing optimally as a human
Yeah.
being. Like, I'm
Yes,
reaching
as a
my full
human,
capacity. And so, if you're
being your
listening to
best
this,
self.
the question you should ask is like, okay, where do I start? How do I get to that particular goal? Well, one
Yeah.
way to think about it first is like health and fitness is not really mentally and physically is not really a destination. It's a journey. Like
Yeah.
you can reach a high level of it, but if you don't continue to work at it, you go the other way,
Yeah.
right?
You're either forward or backward. There's no standing still.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
so
I
what
actually just put a quote like that on my computer today.
I did, that's why I did. I just
Yeah.
put it. No, I was kidding. That's cool. That's awesome. Um,
Yeah.
moving. How do I want to put this? I think what we want to try to help you do is invite you on the journey, but actually clarify like where do you start? How do you get there? How do you break it down? Because it can seem kind of ominous. This whole like I want to get
Yeah.
better at my mental health and physical health, but if you leave that as ambiguous as it is, it's really hard to fill out how to get there. Like I want to be stronger in my mind and I want a stronger body. Great. Like what's the steps you're going to get there?
Details.
I
Yeah.
don't really know. They may know some things like probably need to sleep better, need to train better, need to eat better, but really
Yeah.
getting specific about that is going to help reach the goal. And so I want to lead off into this journey about how to develop a strong mind and a strong body. by a story I was reading. So, have you heard of
Oh,
the sports psychologist Bill uh, Bezic? I think is how you say his last name, Bill Bezic.
I have heard of him. Yes.
Okay, he is so fun to listen to. He has this really cool accent. But he asked his athletes these three questions, and I think this is great for those who are listening. He would ask just to help them gain clarity and focus. Again, remember he's a sports psychologist. He would ask
Yeah.
these three questions: what do you want? How badly do you want it? How much are you willing to suffer? And I love
Mm.
these questions. The last two are kind of similar, but the first one he says he spends the most time on. What do you want? This actually helps clarify for people like, what is your actual goal? Well, an
Yeah.
athlete might respond to that. I want to win the title. But Bill
Right.
would go deeper and say, oh, okay, well, why do you want to win the title?
Yeah.
And what he
There's
would do is
always
he
a
would
why.
just, yep, he would just keep getting back down, down. And what he would try to do is he would take that athlete and bring them down to the fundamental reason why they're doing what they're doing. And
Mm.
when this happens, when the athlete would gain clarity on, okay, I want to win the title, but here's the ultimate reason behind what I'm doing. When that goal becomes really clear, it becomes the necessary fuel to help them execute the daily disciplines to get to the goal. You see what
I
I mean?
love that.
But so if it was shallow and they were foggy on the goal, then when they're in the exercise, they're in the practice, they're running the suicides, whatever it is, they're
Yeah.
like, why am I doing this? Why am I
Right.
suffering so much? Is it
Yeah.
worth it? Well, if you don't have a clear goal, it may not be worth it. But if you're like, I know exactly why I'm on this field, I know why I'm suffering the way that I am because there is no negotiables here. I'm pressing towards the goal, and I think that's brilliant. And then he follows it by, yes, okay, your goal's clarified, but how much really are you willing to suffer for it? So now he's implying in this that no one
Mm.
really actually reaches their goals unless they have grit.
Yeah.
And so,
100%. Oh my goodness.
right,
There is no easy way to the top of a mountain.
right,
Like
exactly.
you gotta climb. You just gotta go. Oh, that's good.
So if you have the goal and then you're like, oh, this is going to take grit, you're automatically in your mind starting to put down like, what would make this hard to reach? What are the obstacles to overcome?
Hmm.
But see, having a clear goal and then also having clarity on these are probably the main obstacles, you're already, like you talked about early in your story, you're already aware.
Yeah.
Awareness is actually the beginning step of change. And that's why Bill starts with,
Yeah.
what do you want? Oh, I don't really actually know. And you know what, Amber, you probably know this with talking with people. People actually just don't know how to put in words what they want a lot of time.
Correct. Oh yeah. Oh, it's such a series of questions digging in on like what is their ultimate reason for getting started? Like truly. And we can dive into this more about like how I got to like my ultimate reason and kept that at the forefront of my brain. But like if you don't dig in, and some people need help processing through that. Like some people truly don't know how to. And there's people who helped me at the beginning of my journey, helped me figure out my true core why. And then once you get that down and you have that self-awareness, and build on that, then you can help other people do that too.
Yeah, and it also helps you know what to say yes to, and you also
Hmm.
know your what your no's are.
Yeah.
It clarifies that, at least to a greater level. We all kind of fall back into crowding out our life with non-essentials and getting too busy or too many irons in the fire. We all do that. But the more we can put in front of ourselves, like, this is why I'm doing these actions. This is my ultimate reason behind this. It really helps drive. It's the purpose that drives the practice. If you have the
Ooh.
practices and the purpose is not clarified, you will eventually fall off because you're just like,
Yes.
well, what's really the purpose? I don't like to suffer for suffering's sake, right?
Yep.
I want to have a reason behind it. But if you have the purpose, the suffering then makes sense. Now, I would add two things to Bill's approach. Do you want to hear them?
I do. I
You can
wanted to
tell me if
hear your
they're bad. You
thoughts.
could say, "Don't add these ever again." But here they are. Okay, so I would consolidate his second point, like how badly do you want it? How much do you want to suffer? I feel like those are
Yeah.
similar. He might have a nuance to that I'm not seeing, but I
Mhm.
would ask, "What do you want? How much do you? How much are you willing to suffer for it?" And here's my two extra questions: Who is accomplishing this goal already?
Ooh.
The reason I'd ask that is that this would start to help them think about, I need a mentor and a coach.
Yeah.
And so a coach or a mentor is like the fast track to success because they've they're further down the road than you. They don't have to necessarily be a champion, but they're definitely further down the road. And they could tell you what works and what doesn't work.
Yeah.
They've already seen that success. So instead of reinventing the wheel and doing some guesswork to figure out what are the type of rhythms that should be in my life, you could talk to this coach. And of course, you have your own intuition, and your own personal study. Those are all great. You're talking about like reading and studying. I think that's vital, important. But be able to have mentors that provide both the expertise in the thing that you want to learn, experience, but also accountability to keep you on track. A
Yeah.
coach goes far. So if I'm thinking like, hey, I want to, like, it could be this. Like, let's remove it from fitness for a second. Like, if I want to become really um, a good businessman or a real wealthy businessman, I could kind of guess at that, or I could say, oh, hey, look, this person, owns several businesses and is doing things really, really well. He's excelling. Let me reach out to them. Takes a
Yeah.
lot of humility though, because you
So
have to.
much humility. That's what I was actually I was like gonna plug in. I was like, the amount of humility that you have to accept and be willing to admit that you don't know everything that you want to know, or you don't know everything about the field that you are getting into, is astronomical. But I do say that it really gets easier once you just like get into it, admit that you don't know what you don't know, but you want to learn, and you're an open book. As soon as you make yourself an open book to learning and an open mind and have that learner's mentality, the world is your freaking oyster. If you can
Mhm.
maintain that your entire, like whatever you're pursuing, maintain that the entire time. Even if you become super successful, there's always somebody more successful that you can learn from.
Yes,
Always.
yes. And it's amazing how you can learn stuff from people who are maybe not as experienced, but
Yeah.
you can learn from so many people. And that's the one thing that I know in my background, it was easy to be in a place where you had to portray yourself as knowing you got your life together, all this stuff,
Yeah.
and you're like in your 20s, and it's like I should be, I should have a mentor, and I
Yeah.
really don't. And that's another thing too, which is another topic we could talk about, like mentorship, is that an older generation has to open up and be humble. Sometimes an older
Mm.
generation doesn't want to mentor because they feel like, oh, that younger generation is always critiquing me, you know. But
Yeah.
like we should be open to critique and being
Yes.
willing to change. But also the younger generation just being like young and maybe a little bit ignorant of all of life, but they feel like they got it all figured out, but just
Yeah.
starting humble. So I think asking that question of like, what do I want? How much am I willing to suffer for it? Who's doing this that I could
Yeah.
get mentorship from that would help me avoid any of the pitfalls? And then the last thing, oh, is there anything else you want to say on that note? I didn't cut you off
No.
to that. Okay. And the
No,
last
you
thing
didn't.
was, what daily disciplines do I need to implement? And this is
Mm.
where I'm taking, and I know that Bill was trying to get, the main thing he was trying to do is saying, you need clarity on the goal.
Right.
But I don't think that that is far enough to see true change. Clarity on the
Right.
goal could be just one of those big moments in your mind, like, oh, I got clarity. When you have a moment of clarity, it's just so fun and cool. And you could actually trick
Most of the time.
yourself. Yeah, yeah, right. You could trick yourself though to think that you progressed just because you had clarity. But
Right.
now you have to actually put in the action to move towards the goal. And I think that's where the practice comes. This is something I learned from James Clear. in his book,
Oh,
Atomic Habits.
Atomic Habits.
And he said
Good
something,
book.
yeah, oh, I love it. It sounds like the opposite of Bill here. This is what he says.
Mm-hmm.
He says, focus on systems, not goals. And
Mm-hmm.
that's a weird statement. It almost sounds like the opposite, where Bill's like, what do you want? That's pinpoint your goal, your ultimate goal.
Right.
But James here is saying, focus on systems, not goals. And I think what he's saying here is not don't have clarity about your goals. What he's trying to say
Right.
is as long as you stay on goal level and you haven't learned how to implement a system to reach that goals, it's only a dream.
It's only a
It's a
dream.
vision, it's a dream, but it's not going to be a reality until you've actually figured out how to implement the necessary systems to bring you to that goal. And
Yeah.
that was huge for me because I, like so many people, you probably could relate with this, Amber. I have so many times in my life where I'm thinking, like, one day my moment's going to come. I'm going to
Mm.
have this big macro shift and everything's going to change. Like, I'm just going to wake up and, like, okay, I'm going to have the perfect nutrition, the perfect exercise, the perfect body, the perfect mentality, and fill in the blank with any other things. It
This
could be
whole
talk
new
about,
life.
yeah, money's going to
Yeah.
come in. I'm just going to have everything super. I'm going to be an awesome dad. I'm going to have it dialed in. And, but that just doesn't happen. Like,
Nope.
rarely does somebody have like a huge, just this macro shift where they actually do bring about true change.
Yeah.
Now, the only thing I would say that potentially could happen that does bring about a macro shift is like if somebody is facing something that is leading them to their death. Like they have a
Yeah.
diagnosis that says, hey, if you don't change this, you have the genetic, you know, past here. Your genetics, it says that you're at risk for heart disease and heart failure. And if you don't change your habits, you'll probably be dead in the next 10 years. Well, that's a big enough shock to
Yeah.
cause someone to say, I probably should think about changing the way I do things. And if they go in and their blood pressure's high and the doctor's like, you're at high risk, well, that shock could move them into saying, okay, that's it. I'm going home and I'm cleaning out the cabinets. I'm overhauling. I'm going to eat right,
Yeah.
exercise right, sleep right. And I do hear a few stories, but most of us don't have that type of shocking pain to
No.
where we could actually support that much shift weight, if you would. It's almost like
Yeah.
it's too much. I mean, I've tried it. I'm like, okay, never going to eat sugar again. Gonna drink a gallon of water a day. I'm going to always be progressing in my weightlifting. It's always going to go up, never going to plateau, so on and so forth. Have you been in this spot, Amber? Tell me I'm not the only one.
There's so much science behind that. No, you are
Yeah.
not the only one. I feel like a majority of people kind of go through this, like, I want to change so much about my life. It can come from a book they're reading, a TV show that inspires them, that they're like, I'm going to overhaul my life and become that person. And so they try to make all of these changes all at once. I mean, I've been there. I have totally been there. And you create this tidal wave of change and you wipe yourself out. You straight up wipe yourself out and you wonder why. And it's because, well, this is a very strange analogy, but it works. You didn't learn how to surf. So, and that's
Yeah.
where, like, creating these tiny micro shifts, habits, daily habits stacking on top of each other becomes so incredibly crucial. I was listening and have been listening to one of my favorite podcasts called Empower Her for like close to 3 years now.
What's it called?
And Empower Her. Not really
Oh,
sure it's going to be a
Empower Her.
podcast.
Okay.
I'm not really sure it's going to be
Awesome.
a podcast for you, but it's a great
It's going to be
podcast.
my favorite.
Yeah. Anyways, and she touched on this, and what you were saying kind of goes right along with it, of having this vision of this person that you want to become. And what do you have to do on a daily basis to become that person? Like, what what are the habits that that person has that makes them them, that makes them successful in whatever area you're admiring? You know,
Mm.
maybe it's their health, maybe it's their business, maybe it's their relationship with their spouse, um, whatever. And what is that person doing every single day that makes them that way? And when you break it down and you don't just see like the ultimate amazing goal of they're so successful in X, and you go, they're successful in X because of this habit, this habit, this habit, this habit. Boom. Okay, so you start with one of those. When I got into my health and fitness journey, I did the whole try overhaul thing myself. And the first 10 pounds that I lost were easy. It was after that it was not easy. I was like, why isn't this working? Why have I plateaued? What happened? And it's because was working out 5 to 6 days a week. I had completely cleaned out, all the junk food from my house, which did not last, BT dubs. And I tried to become like this super motivated, amazing person in like a week. And that's just not how it works. So then I broke it back down to just focusing in on one single habit and nailed that down. And I built then another habit on top of that, and then another habit on top of that. And like when I look at Amber 3 years ago compared to now, I am an entirely different person in like really
Mhm.
good ways, in the best ways. I'm so thankful for my journey. I'm so thankful for the self-awareness and the negative things in my life that I took that brought me to where I'm at now. But it was not an overnight change at all. And that's just not how it works.
So break down for me like one specific micro, excuse me, micro change in your
Mhm.
life as it relates to, it could be mental health or physical health. I know you mentioned things about nutrition. It could be any of
Yeah.
these categories, but like something that you did, that you incorporated, that one habit, and maybe
Yeah.
how you were actually able to make that successful in the
Sure.
long term.
I'm going to go ahead and tap into the nutrition part just because I feel like so many people struggle with this. Um, when I started my health and fitness journey, like nutrition was like, oh, I'm just going to eat cleaner. I can't tell you how many times I hear that from my clients. I'm just going to eat cleaner. What does cleaner mean to you? Like,
Mm.
can we dig in on that? Because for some people, it's just like, oh, it's just less junk food, or it's one less soda a week, or like no more alcohol, but everything
Isn't it
else
just
stays the
the
same.
isn't it just the keto diet? Isn't that the cleanest on earth? Sorry,
Don't
I
get
just
me
had to.
started. No, 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 that's my trigger point.
I know
Hollywood
that's why I brought
diets.
it up.
Oh my gosh. Um, or they'll tap into a Hollywood diet. Um, and for me, I started with um basically calorie counting, and I'm just gonna make a plug. I'm not like demonizing calorie counting, but the more I'm in the fitness industry, the more I realize what a mental issue it can become, especially for women when it comes to
Mm.
calorie counting, which is something we'll definitely touch on later, and how there's healthier ways to approach this. So I started with calorie counting. I was very inconsistent with it, very. So I kind of trashed that. And then I just started with, okay, making sure I had protein at every meal and a fruit or vegetable, like one or the other. And usually, like for dinner, it was both, right? And I saw success in that, like making sure like that was a regular part of my diet. And then the more I read in on it, I realized, okay, I'm not getting enough protein. I'm like, I'm really not, which is very common in America. Over 50% of Americans do not eat enough protein that they should be. And we supplement in carbohydrates and unhealthy fats, which is why we have such the epidemic of overweight and obese people that we do. People just don't know, right? We don't know what we don't know. And so once I learned like, okay, protein needs to be the main source of like what's on my plate and everything else built around it. That's that wheel, just kept spinning, and I kept learning more and learning more. And I was like, okay, so now we got the protein down. Now let's talk about the type of carbohydrates that you're eating, because carbohydrates come from vegetables, fruit, grains, lentils, beans, you
Right.
name it.
So to be just
Carbohydrates are
pause you
everywhere.
for just a second. So
Hmm.
for those who are listening, the first, or at least one of the first things you were saying, the habit, you're like, okay, I'm going to change my protein intake. Or actually, the first thing
Yeah.
you said was, I'm going to eat more like I'm going to eat these type of categories. So meats, fruits, vegetables.
Yeah.
That's going to be my staple. Not that you don't have anything else, but
Right.
that's going to
That's
be
my
my
staple.
staple. And then
Yeah.
you're like, okay, I've got that rhythm down.
Yep.
Oh, I'm realizing I don't have enough protein. So that was an additional, um, almost an additional habit that you layered on. So it's another micro shift
Yep.
that you
There's another
implemented.
micro
So
shift.
now you're going into the third macro, or I keep saying micro shift was the, now your approach to carbohydrates and what kind you
Yes.
would get. Okay.
Exactly. Yep. And that's where I stacked on top of that. I was like, okay, what can I do with that? So now, like, I've just continued that journey of tiny little things that I'm learning about, that now I can approach food. Like, going grocery shopping doesn't stress me out. Making meal plans doesn't stress me out, because I know exactly what I should be reaching for. And it's just this, as long as you're open and staying consistent with these tiny little shifts in how you're eating, like that's how I've kept off 35 pounds. Um, and like, would I like to see more shifts in my health? Yes. And that's going to take another macro shift of me embracing, something else. What's the next thing that I can embrace and stack on top of what I already know to
Yeah.
get to where I want to become, like to get to what I want to become.
Hmm. It's
So
so,
yeah, that's just a little glimpse into that.
that's cool. It's like, when you do a macro shift, you try to do that and you
Hmm.
fail over and over again, it makes you less motivated. That's where a lot of people just say it didn't work for me.
Yeah.
And what actually didn't work for them was they try to take on too much, and the weight of that shift was more than what they could sustain for a long
Yes.
period
Ooh,
of
that's
time.
good. The weight of
And
that shift. Yes.
yeah, so but a lot of people will keep looking at stories like, look at this person. They all of a sudden seem like they changed overnight. But what they didn't see was there was accumulation of micro shifts, and there was a tipping point. But no one noticed the person until the tipping point happened. And it's
Yes.
a macro shift from our perspective, but it's actually the accumulation of these micro shifts that says, oh wow, look, that person was overweight and they've lost 30 pounds and they have better muscular definition, and wow, they're so much more confident. Well, it started off, if they have any level of sustainability, hard to get that out. It started with like, hey, I'm just gonna change this one thing, and I'm gonna get it in. And you know what? Some habits, it might be 3 weeks, the 21 days
Hmm.
idea. Some it might be like 6 months, and it's okay. Like, be patient. Don't beat yourself up. Like, one thing that I'm working on is, actually on two sides of it, is hydration.
Yeah.
One, I used to think it was kind of the gym bro, science bro type philosophy, like, got to get a gallon of water a day in, bro. Or, you're not going to, your body's made up of 70% water, which is
Yeah.
interesting. The water that we're 70% of is not in the actual water form that we think of. So it doesn't actually work that way. Like, if I drink more water, I'm going to, anyways, we can get into the science of that later. But the, I realized I don't actually need a gallon of water a day. That's not necessary. That has you running to the restroom all the time too. It's not waking up at night. But the thing though, that it is important to be hydrated for strength training, which we'll talk about in
Yeah.
another episode. But I find myself getting up in the morning, and I just really enjoy coffee. I'm tired, and I could drink coffee all morning. You're like hiding your cup. No, I was kidding. I could drink coffee all morning, and I could almost, unless I worked out in the morning.
Hmm.
If I didn't work out in the morning, then I could go all morning without any water.
Oh, for
And
sure.
so I heard of someone doing this, and this is not something I've started, but I have friends. One of their micro shifts was they actually put a bottle of water in an obvious place wherever they go first in the morning. So they go into the
Mm,
bathroom to brush their teeth or whatever. One thing that James Clear says is that when you're setting goals, you need to make it obvious, attach it to
yes.
another habit that already exists. So, like if you brush your teeth every morning, have that bottle of water. So you pick it up, drink a few ounces. Then when you go down to make yourself breakfast, you're drinking on that water. And then if you go off to the gym, you drink that. You could down 32 ounces from a morning routine, which
Yep.
sets you up for a good spaced out regimen of intake of water. And well, my goal right now is actually to make that into a habit. Like I drink
Mm,
probably enough water, but I don't know if you do this. Like, oh, got to get my water in. Go 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 go. And I try to chug the whole like a whole bottle or two, which doesn't really help you get hydrated like you should. You need to be drinking
right.
water
Throughout the
throughout,
day.
yeah, throughout the day. But that was
Hmm.
one thing that I was working on changing. But those are like I'm going to try to get that work on that habit, and it might take me, I don't know, it might take me 8 weeks to get it to where it's just my habit every single day. But
Yeah.
then I have other things where like when I take my supplements, you know, when I when it comes to like my exercise routine, I have certain cues like, okay, this is the time that I go, and now I got that habit ingrained. And I'm like you, I'm trying to think of like what are other ways, like disciplines as it relates to training or nutrition or hydration, sleep,
Yeah.
mindfulness. Like remember we talked about change coming from first being aware, but creating a discipline where I actually do this regularly, accountability, furthering my education. Like, I don't want to plateau in my
Right.
knowledge of health and fitness. I want to continue to grow, but do I actually have a discipline of where I'm actually furthering my knowledge in these areas? So I think
Yeah.
these are things that are really helpful. Well, what I want to close on with this is just actually what James Clear says. A couple of things I just want to tap off about these micro habits that are these micro shifts that may be helpful. First, focus on the system. So once you have that clear goal, don't just state, this is my goal. What's your system to reach it? And then
Right.
once you have the system, find the smaller points within the system and just master one at a time. You might be able to master
One.
two, but just try to bite off what you can. Make it obvious. He says, make it attractive, which I think what he means by that is like for instance, let's say that for mindfulness, I want to try to incorporate that discipline of meditation and journaling. Well, if I can
Yeah.
put that into a a setting like, ooh, I have my evening coffee. If you drink coffee in the evenings, that's probably not a good habit. But anyways, evening coffee, and then like it's in a setting, like it's in a certain chair that you love. Like I have my coffee, I'm sitting in my chair in the evening, and I take 30 minutes. It makes it attractive because you have a good setting for
Yeah.
it. So you create the environment for that habit to thrive. He talks about making it easy, which is not always easy to do the habit, but you want to try to remove any unnecessary friction to
Right.
it. Like, for instance, do you like to jog? And if you want to jog in the morning, setting out your stuff the night before
Yep. The night
re-
before.
removes the
It's
friction.
hugely helpful. It's hugely
Um,
helpful.
yeah, it's a total game changer for me. Like, if I do anything in the morning, if I don't set it out the night before, I could be a wimp in the morning. So, like, get
Yeah.
up, let's do this. But having it set up is a game changer for me. He says make it satisfying, which means like have a certain incentive. Like, hey, if I do this for a couple of weeks, I'm going to enjoy this.
Right.
Like for one thing that I do is that I go all week eating pretty, and I'm going to use the word that maybe you could correct me on later, but relatively clean, meaning that I'm eating those higher proteins, fruits, vegetables. But then when I
Yeah.
get to the weekend to Friday, I'll normally enjoy like my boys love pizza. I got three young crazy boys. So I'll have pizza, and sometimes we'll have like cake. And I'm not talking about like, oh, this is a healthy keto stevia cake with, whatever. It's like, no, this is just a cake. I'm just
Yeah.
enjoying it. But when you know like, hey, I am going to be able to enjoy these type of things too. But right now I'm going to discipline, and then there's going to be a sense of reward. I think that can be a huge thing. And then he said, track your track your progress, and be patient. I think these are
Yeah.
great tips in
Oh,
the
the
area of
patience
mind
one.
and body. Yeah.
Oh,
Oof.
the patience one. This instant gratification society that we have right now, people lack patience. And we've created a culture around not needing as much patience. We have Amazon Prime, we have Netflix at home, we have microwaves, anything that you can think of that makes life quote unquote more streamlined also takes away our mental cognition to force us to have patience. And
Right.
that's one thing. True health, mental, physical, spiritual, like whatever you're tapping into, those are not instant gratification areas. Like, yeah, absolutely. You could probably lose 10, 15 pounds in a few weeks on, say, the keto diet. Absolutely. Um, but come back to me when you stop the keto diet and we'll discuss
Yes.
your results afterwards, because true habit was never formed. And that's not something you're going to take long term. But patience is so incredibly key. And that's where when people come to me and they're like, I'm lacking motivation, I'm like, screw motivation. Like, that's not going to help you. Patience and consistency is going to get you where you need to be. It's going to create these disciplines that you need to, you want this new life, you're going to have to create new habits, AKA new disciplines every single day.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. A good segue to kind of close this episode out would be for those who are listening. We'd love to hear from you. Actually, that's one of the things that I'm most excited about this podcast is
Yeah.
hearing from you guys, our audience, growing. If this was helpful to you, please feel free to share it. But also, I'd love to hear about the shifts that maybe you've made or going to make that has really helped you. Also, if you are a person that says, man, you're asking this questions like, who's doing this that I could talk to? If you would like to have a conversation with myself or Amber, we'd love to do that. And also, I'm going to give a plug for Amber here. She
Oh,
is
yeah.
a personal trainer. She's a coach. So she has, you do most of your coaching in the gym, right?
Yes, I am mostly in the gym. I have taken a few like online clients who just need somebody to check in with them, create some programming custom for them, and then we do a lot of chat around nutrition. I'm working on getting my certification in nutrition right now, so it's a great time. And I think accountability is huge. When I got my own coach, my shift, which is we'll definitely touch on later, like amped up entirely when I had that accountability. That was a
Yes.
big one. Mm-hmm.
Yes. Well, if you need a coach, Amber is amazing. She will help you. She'll help you like she will kick your butt probably really hard
That's what my
getting
clients
going.
say.
That's right. That's right. I think I saw somebody saying that like they had a leg workout with you and they were like
uh,
they're really feeling it. Made me laugh. But yeah, if you are looking for coaching needs help, please reach out to us. We'd love to help you. And the next episode, we're going to start to dive into a particular modality of training. So we're thinking about building a stronger mind and a stronger body. You can't avoid the topic of strength training. We're going to
yeah.
talk about how obviously strength training will build a stronger body, but also we want to talk about the benefits of how it builds a stronger mind. So that's going to be
Yeah.
next week. We're going to talk about the benefits of that. So we hope that you will join us.
Can't wait.
Amber, thanks for hanging out. And for everyone
John,
listening, we'll
this
see
was
you next
great.
time.